the impact on my life was learning this framework, connecting it to remote viewing as I understood it, parallel universe theory, meditation, mindset, putting it all in the center and layering in all the things that are not true yet. And then telling myself all these things, baking my principles and my values into it so that my behaviors reflect my values.
Dude, thank you for sharing this, man. This is just already impacting me just to kind of hear some of this stuff. You do a lot of this, bro.
I try.
You do. You don't try. You actually, you do. Welcome to the Impact Effect Podcast. We've got another amazing guest here in the Honeypot studio inside Music City Work Club. Ernest Chapman is in the house. He's a brand therapist, esoteric philosopher, and this is going to be some good energy, folks. You're going to want to lean into this one. So please help me welcome Ernest Chapman to the podcast.
Thank you, Jim.
Was that a good enough intro, bro?
Yeah, I don't know if I would accuse myself of being an esoteric philosopher, but I do love wisdom, and philosophia is the love of wisdom. And I like esoteric subjects because I like to go deep, and there's a lot of beauty in the depths of esoteric philosophy.
Beauty in the depths. Well, let's go deep right now, man. Impact Effect Podcast, true fashion. I ask everybody a similar question. What is the most impactful moment for you in your life to date so far that has changed everything for the future?
The keywords for the future are kind of what stuck in my head. It was when I learned how to write and read every day a morning formula. And I know that sounds a little bit kind of, pedestrian maybe. Oh, you read your little morning script, good for you, right? But it literally changed my life. And the moment that it came together was in an unexpected place. I had just finished sort of a phase of building the business that I currently have, creating brand therapy, working with some amazing mentors and getting this thing launched. And I had a little bit of cash flow coming in that wasn't just getting spent, which was kind of an amazing moment. And I got in a crazy little coaching program that Taylor Welch put together called Client Kit. And the guy that sold me into that program is a guy named Cole Gordon. And I remember where I was standing when I said, yes, I'm going to do this. And I didn't have the money. I put it on a credit card. I could not afford it, but I took a leap of faith. I've always been a planner. I've always been a careful, thoughtful person. And I just dropped $10,000 on this thing that may or may not have worked. And the very first thing we did in that course was we basically wrote the history of our future with a morning formula that was said in the present tense. This was worth the price of admission, helped me get a 10X, and got me to the point where I'm doing this in my own way on a daily basis. And anytime I drift away from it, I start losing track of it. I can feel it slowly kind of getting off course. I read mine again today. I hadn't read it in a couple of months. I actually have been forgetting to read it. I've been too busy. And then and it all came back to me, and I realized I actually need to update this thing, because every time I go through my morning formula, I have a list of bonkers expectations for who I am, what I'm doing, what's already happened. And, most of it hadn't happened yet, but I'm saying this in the present tense. So that means I'm creating an expectation that my subconscious mind is consciously and subconsciously, my mind is fighting with itself. Because if I don't live up to the expectations I've laid down to myself, then I don't feel like I have integrity. And it creates this really uncomfortable feeling of, oh, yeah, you said you were doing this, but you're not. You said you were this kind of person, but, well, looks like you're not. And I use it to keep myself honest. I actually brought it with me. Never shared it with anybody.
Oh, okay. All right. Are you willing to give us a little taste?
I can give you a little taste. This is the 2025 version of it. And I would say it's time to update it, because I won't tell you which ones of these things have come true, but a lot of this stuff has started to come true. And this is what always happens. I started doing this in 2018. And the things
2018. So you've been doing this for consecutively for years.
Yeah. And you have to update it. If you don't update it, then you end up flatting out and just kind of I'm this kind of person. I do this kind of revenue. I show up like this for my business. I show up like this for my family. And it gets kind of boring because you've actually successfully done it. The way it works is very similar to something that I learned at a remote viewing workshop in Puerto Rico in about 2004, 2005 that I went to. I was at a Deepak Chopra meditation conference down there. Actually, it was the thing he put together. I mean, you can Google it. It was called the Alliance for a New Humanity. And David Morehouse was there. And he's one of the guys that created, or at least claims to create, I guess, the CIA remote viewing program. And he did a workshop, and there was all these breakout workshops where you could go like sit in a room with some interesting person and they'll talk and you just take notes. It was pretty wild. And I saw that and I was like, all right, I'm going to do that one. That looks cool. He drew this crazy diagram on the whiteboard and it looked kind of like, imagine a point with a bunch of lines coming off the point. And the point was the present moment. And all these lines coming off the point were landing at all these other points kind of fanned out. And, one thing I remember from that was, it was pretty wild. He was basically saying, the people that are good at this are not the people that are seeing what's actually there. And say you're doing some kind of a test where you have to find a red ball on a green table behind a blue door in building number 6. And there's 30 buildings, but you don't know that. And you have to find the ball. And you're sitting there like trying to find the ball. According to what I remember from this workshop, which, I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm dreadfully wrong, because I know people on the internet like to correct things.
Pour it into us though, dude. Like it's not all about those minor details.
Yeah.
It's about how this has impacted and changed your life, which I think is just amazing that you're sharing such high level stuff with the audience today, because this, dude, like your growth has exploded. You've done things that many people haven't done. You're extremely intelligent, but you also make commitments and fulfill those commitments from what I've learned from you. So this is really important. So let's jump into it, man.
Well, yeah. So to make a long story short, his argument was you're not actually locating the ball on the table and behind the door. You're parallel jumping into the universe where that happens to be true. Does that make sense? So it's a little different than from what I understood. Now, look, maybe I hallucinated that. If so, I jumped into the parallel universe where my hallucination of what he was saying was true. I have taken that to heart. And so the morning formula is a exercise in cognitive dissonance. So I'll read a couple pieces of it. I won't read the whole thing because it's 5 pages long. It would take a long time, but
and hold on, you're doing this every single morning, or that's the practice of?
Yeah, like
is
I
this
said,
something where you wake up and read it on your phone? Do you exercise first?
Yeah.
Do you eat first? Do you make coffee first? Like, give us the breakdown of your morning routine and how this kind of falls into it.
Well, I've slipped recently. So, I mean, I'm in a mode where I'm like, all right, I should probably put in the morning formula that I do the morning formula consistently. And then if I don't, because I said I do, now I do, if that makes sense.
It does.
But recently I've kind of slipped away because I've just gotten really busy. But on a perfect day, here's a perfect morning, which of course doesn't exist, especially when you have 2 kids. But a perfect morning is I get up, I go to the gym, I work out, I meditate, I read the morning formula, and then I go into about my day. So I've made
How long is that usually? Like, are you a hour meditation, 10-minute meditation?
Short, 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, short meditation. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for a flow state. And if I can tap into that flow state efficiently, I'm not going to sit there going in circles. I think extended meditations are a great thing. I don't do them too often, but I think those are wonderful. But I'm not, I got a lot. I'm a time blocker. So I'm like literally like blocking it in, but I put it in specific places based on the state I need to be in, if that makes sense. And then I'll read the morning formula. Now, if I can't hit the gym, I need to read it on my phone. I need to, that kind of thing. So, here's an example, and I'll just read pieces from different sections. And again, I want you to remember that as I'm reading this, I have not achieved all of these things. So this makes me want to achieve them. So this one starts with a quote from Psalms, Psalm 127:1. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord preserves the city, he who preserves it watches over the ruins. And I read that to remind myself that everything I'm building is actually me trying to get out of the way and build what I feel like God is trying to build. And if I can do that, I feel like what I build will be good. And if I try to make it about my ego and myself being the star of the show and centering it on me, not centering it on God, then I feel like what I might build could fall into ruins. And everything is a sandcastle, and there's always going to be a tide. That's part of life. But I read that to remind myself of that. And within that frame, I ask some questions. What 10x activities will I be focusing on to achieve my $5 million top line revenue goal in 2026? And as I read that, I'm going, that's funny. There's cognitive dissonance. So you can obviously tell that I'm not at a $5 million top line, because if I was, I might have to change it. What 2x activities will I be letting go of to create space for $5 million worth of opportunity in 2026? What would it feel like to be able to finish all the non-revenue generating projects? There's a whole bunch of business questions that I'm asking myself. What would it feel like to spend most of my time with my kids, helping them discover their passions while passing on my values, skills, knowledge, and connections?
When you ask yourself that question, do you then go into that feeling or emotion?
No.
Or this is just programming the subconscious to get used to getting to that state of that feeling subconsciously?
Yeah, it's getting in a flow state while planting seeds. Because that question, what would it feel like to spend most of my time with my kids, helping them discover their passions while passing on my values, skills, knowledge, and connections? I mean, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, I'm actually actively working right now to integrate as much as I can with my 12-year-old, some of the stuff that I'm doing in my world with his world that's catching up into my world, because he's 12 now. So he can actually like come to certain things that, he wouldn't be able to do when he was 6, right?
Coming to the Impact event,
He's coming to your event on Thursday.
I'm pumped for that, dude. When you said you got him a ticket, man, I was just like,
yeah,
I cannot wait to have my kids get a little bit older, right, to bring them into those experiences. And actually, I don't even think I shared this with you. I'm going to bring my 3-year-old. And you impacted me to do that, because I was giving an excuse saying, oh, this and that. But like, I had her here at Music City Work Club the other day, and she was on stage and she did this like pose. And I was just like, she belongs on stage, man. She wants to be on stage. So I'm going to bring her up on stage. I'm going to bring her into my world.
So there's a version of you that's still 3 years old that's listening to yourself, talk to yourself. And when you have a kid, you really connect the dots that this morning formula stuff, let me read a couple things, and I want you to hear it as the child inside of yourself. Because the child inside of myself listens to the adult inside of myself read this and believes every word. I'm a strong, gentle, loving father and husband. My home is a place of peace and rest. I remain centered and calm regardless of what is happening around me. I'm a highly paid marketing and strategy consultant. I'm a business owner building value that can be sold at a 10x multiple with parallel companies. I'm a world-class man, marketer, musician, magician, mindset wizard, martial arts master, mentor, and 33rd degree Mason. I don't feel like that all the time. I'm telling myself things that I'm sitting there sometimes going, I don't know if I couldn't wear that that would be like stolen valor or something like, but actually there are things that I have achieved that I have to remind myself, because I get imposter syndrome and I'm sitting here going, I can't own this. And the part of me that thinks I can't own it will sabotage. So I have to reprogram, and I have to say, I am this, I am this, I am that. But
why do you think that's happening to you in those moments?
I think that's part of the human condition, is that we have, especially because I'm talking to my inner child at times and saying, hey, you grew up and you're a superhero. And the inner child is still not sure sometimes. So I have to be able to remind it. I'm among the first to attack and the last to retreat. I am a 21st century Stoic philosopher. I'm an alchemist. These are things that you would never say to somebody at a coffee shop. Like, hey, nice to meet you. Jim, what's your name? Jim, I'm Ernest. Yeah, I'm a wizard. And you just be like, this guy
I wish we lived in a world where we did say that shit, though.
You know what? There's all these things that start with the letter M. Ernest, you left out meth, okay? Financial abundance is a byproduct of hitting my personal goals. I am incredibly healthy and eat amazing food. There's just this ridiculous list of things that if everything in this list is true, then I got it all figured out and I am doing amazing and I'm everything's working and everything's freaking perfect. And when I read it, I am at times painfully aware of the gaps.
Do you think it's possible to ever live a life where all of that is fully true?
Man, I want to think it is. I hope it is. I admire people that seem like they have it all figured out, but I also know that I grew up around famous people, and I grew up around famous people that have a persona and an identity of having it all figured out. And I got to see their inner worlds from backstage, and no, they didn't have it all figured out.
I feel that, dude.
They
I've
did.
seen a lot of that too, man.
Yeah. And, plenty of them are struggled with mental health issues, substance abuse, neurodiversity, all these challenges. So I get through all that stuff. There's a bunch of...
So hold on real quick.
Yeah.
Some of those, who are some of these people that you've seen at that high level? So there's a reference point to the audience. Because I know you and I have had private conversations around some of this stuff, but like, who are some of these people?
Well, I'm not going to name any names when it comes to anyone who has a problem. So I can just tell you that I grew up around a lot of famous artists and musicians.
Okay, so musicians,
mostly
artists,
musicians.
music. Okay, cool.
I as a kid was just regularly backstage hanging out with like Elton John and his band and Bonnie Raitt, and there was a group of like kind of like boomer A-lister musicians that were in my mom's. They're still in my mom's songwriting circle, and she's a hit songwriter. And so I grew up around like country people, like a lot of famous country stars, and that was just my world. Waylon Jennings used to come over to our house and hang out, and I played golf with Willie Nelson when I was 7 years old because he cut one of my mom's songs.
Hold on.
So I grew up around these people. So
You played golf with Willie Nelson when you were 7?
So if we ever go play golf, I'll bring the clubs. He gave me a set of clubs, and we went. So he would get up at he's one of those guys, at least at the time, sort of like CEOs are now. Entrepreneurship's the new rock and roll. He'd get up at 5 or 6 in the morning and get completely blazed and go jogging. And he had probably still does, I don't know, it's down in Austin, a recording studio on a golf course. He owned the whole thing, called it the Cut and Putt.
Cut and
Putt Studios. That was the first time I was 7, sitting next to him on his tour bus, and he whipped out a joint and hotboxed the tour bus with me sitting next to him, like in front of my mom and dad. And I was like, that's not a normal cigarette. What is that? That was how I got introduced to that.
Sorry to bring you off
maybe that
track.
Explains a few things. I don't know.
Deep thinker, going deep.
That's why I only drink dragon's blood.
That's it, man. That's it. What are you drinking, bro?
It's dragon's blood.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, it's the esoteric drink of choice. So I go through all these personal things about who I am and, what I do in different situations. And I go through family. My family is safe, comfortable, and happy. My kids are in whatever school we want, whenever we want. Things like that are like non-negotiables that I just tell myself. Jesse and I have a close, loving, passionate, harmonious relationship. Anytime I violate any of these things, I'm reminding myself, you need to fix that immediately. So if I read this every day, I do a lot better. Then I go through business. There's a whole bunch of business. And then here's one I want to kind of jump into that maybe we can kind of play on.
Dude, thank you for sharing this, man. This is just already impacting me just to kind of hear some of this stuff. And you do a lot of this, bro.
I try.
You do.
I
You
try.
don't try. You actually, you do.
I see the
And
whole
I know you're
list.
not perfect, and I know you're a humble guy,
Yeah.
right? Because we've had a lot of deep conversations, but like he does do a lot of this stuff.
Well, my goal is to do as much of as I can. But so I have 12 principles. I did a big principle exercise a while ago. It's probably 2 years ago, maybe, where I kept seeing people arguing and debating stupid stuff. And I've gone through this phase where I'm less and less interested in debate and argument and more interested in real conversation from a place of first principles. So I listed out my 12 first principles that have held true, and the kind of things that you would get in an argument with somebody about, or like defend a position. Oftentimes they're 5 steps away from a first principle. So like we could talk about any of these, and maybe one of them will jump out at you. So the 12 that I have is, number 1, consciousness creates matter. It's not the other way around. I don't believe that I don't have enough faith to believe that everything's dead and God doesn't exist. That takes more faith than I have. I only have enough faith to believe that God exists and created everything. And because of that, I believe that consciousness came first, and that was the logos emanating into form, the consciousness of God speaking into the world through vibration. And that's what created everything. That's what created matter. So that's my first principle. My second principle is that my rights come from God, that thing that created everything, right? That infinity. So my rights come from God. They don't come from you or some other dude who said, oh, you're okay, cool, I'll let you do stuff. No, they come from God. And that's the foundation of America. That's the foundation of us writing a letter to the king and saying, hey, you're cute and everything, and that's a nice little dress you're wearing, but our rights come from God. And we just sent God an email and he said we can do whatever we want. So bye. That's kind of my second principle there. Anything that violates that is downstream from that principle. Then I believe that God lives in everyone's heart and mind. I believe God is in you. I believe God is in me. I believe God is in everybody. Some people just turn off their ability to connect to and realize that God is actually in there. So, I mean, you can flip the switch off and do horrible things. But I believe that God lives in everyone.
So he's with you in your entirety.
Yes.
But you are either connected to that through belief and faith or not. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I believe. Yeah. So Emmanuel, God is with us, or God is with him. God is with you.
And with the right that God gives you, would you say that you are someone who lives a life of lawlessness?
Lawlessness. Well, no. I want to follow the laws of God.
Do you believe that God made the laws that we are deemed to follow in today's society? Or are those your own laws that you're making?
Right. So that's where we go down 2 or 3 orders of magnitude, or orders of whatever, second and third order. And that's where the debate is. Well, this thing that a guy wrote down 3,000 years ago in a book about eating shellfish, are you allowed to eat shellfish? I mean, I actually had a shrimp spring roll for lunch today. But I'm not worried that I've broken God's laws. But that's a deeper, longer, that's an entire podcast episode, probably with multiple theologians sitting around the table to actually try to decipher what is the law of God and what is something that a human wrote down. And what is the old law and what is the new law? Because you could also say that the new law supersedes the old law. And so that's a huge, huge area. I mean, we could talk about that for
we might have to do a 4-hour episode.
We could. And I would not pretend, I'm not an expert on that. So like I would give you my opinions, but I wouldn't give you anything with a weight of authority on that.
Well, is anybody an expert in your opinion?
Well, not really, because everyone that wrote down the things that we think are the authoritative volumes themselves were humans like us who had some degree of connection to the God that is within them, that is coming through them. And we believe in different religions, believe that those people had patched right in, right? And that it was dumped on their head and downloaded to them. So it's very interesting to me that we have wildly different like cultures and parts of the world that are all made of humans that have a God connection. Like, have you seen, the concept of the Ansible from Ender's Game, where it's this like thing, the communication device that can go past space and time. So there's great prophets, great seers, great oracles, great thinkers, but also people that aren't thinking, and they're just God is telling them something and they're writing it down. And then it's up to us to believe whether or not that person is trustworthy or legit. And that's a huge rabbit hole. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to dictate to you, like, okay, are you going to believe the Vedas? Are you going to believe like Buddhist scriptures? Are you going to believe the which translation of the Bible is correct? Like but
here nor there. Let's get back to the principles.
That's all about the third principle of, rights come from God. God lives in everyone's heart and mind. Then I believe that the government exists primarily to defend rights. That's why we created a government. That turns into a whole bunch of stuff, because like downstream from that, you run into a fork in the road between utilitarianism and collectivism. And, is the government there to protect you from people infringing on your rights, or is the government there to do a whole bunch of other stuff that we could argue about until we're blue in the face? But again, I'm not going there. I'm just saying the government exists to defend rights. Politics is downstream from culture, family, tribe, values, and core behaviors. So I think all the political stuff is actually a subcategory of a subcategory. I would much rather reframe it upstream to like who we are, what we believe. Again, culture, family, tribe, values, and core behaviors. I think our values should drive our politics and not the other way around. I don't want someone's party platform telling me what I'm supposed to believe or value just because they're trying to win an election. I feel like they're trying to manipulate me. That's why, I'm very nonpartisan. I'm ambidextrous, really. Because
I was just going to ask you, how would you even have an association at that point?
No, you have to have two wings to fly. A bird with one wing cannot fly.
Ooh, say it louder for the homies in the back. Come on. Woo.
So I think it's important.
Goosebumps, bro.
It's important that both wings be healthy and have respectful dialogue with each other and be able to connect with each other, hash out their differences, but ultimately not be at war with each other. If they're at war with each other, the bird will fall out of the sky. That's Icarus, the wings melting in the heat of the sun. I don't want that to be my country. I want to live in a better place. Then I think that the next one is verified data is the foundation of all knowledge. So if you tell me something that I'm supposed to know as a form of knowledge, then I want the data. That's simple. Show me the data. Show me the evidence. Show me the proof. I think
everybody can write that on their own principles at this point in time. I think a lot of people, a lot of reaction, a lot of emotion. We're in a very heavy emotional time period, I think, as we shoot this here today. And I think it's really important to trust but verify in a way. And data is that piece of information that, as long as the source isn't subjective, is not subjective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another one I got from my dad on my 12 principles, he used to say this all the time, and I've really internalized it, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that a thing is what it is and not another thing. In other words, objects of thought or objects in the world or things that possess a definition have an essential quality to them, that it is what it is. Now, there are some things that have characteristics of different things. That itself is a thing that has an essential quality of having multiple characteristics. So it's very simple. A thing is what it is and not another thing. Really, in order for something to become a different thing, it must die in some way or be destroyed and reconstituted. And so there's, when you talk about a personality as a thing or an identity as a thing, I think it's possible for people to go through death and rebirth to become a new version of themselves. So I think that is possible. But at any moment in time, when you take a snapshot, the thing is what it is. That's a powerful principle that can really go into a lot of places. I also believe that the family is the core unit of humanity. I don't think the state is the core unit. I don't think the single individual solitary person is the core unit. I think the family is the core unit. And we need that. So what comes down off that principle is that we need to optimize our families. We need to have healthy, strong families that, you want to come back for Thanksgiving. When your kids grow up, they should want to come back. And so what can we do now? What can you do now as a father to set up a healthy dynamic in your home so that your family is the core unit? Everything you're doing in work is for your family. Really, at the end of the day, there's a bigger vision. There's layers to it, but then that family is the core unit of humanity. You have one chip on that poker table of life to get on the right number. And it's not all chance. There's a lot you can do, So I believe that very strongly.
Man,
I'll
that one hit hard, dude. That one hit hard. Wow.
I just run them every day. I just kind of remind myself.
It's interesting to me because your depth around these principles, this isn't something that you read in a book one day and decided to scribe it on a piece of paper. This isn't something that you solely thought through and just agreed with and made it your own. It sounds to me like you have gone deep on these principles prior to making them principles. Who else in your life have you pulled into this to come up with these? I heard you say your dad. Is there anybody else that you've navigated these conversations with before you definitively put them on this piece of paper as your 12 principles?
Every mentor of mine has principles. and has taught me things. And I can identify some of these that come from specific people. In terms of the process of writing them all down in this way, I mean, that was just doing the morning formula process that I learned from Taylor Welsh. I'm sure he learned it from someone else. The way he thinks, the way he did it really influenced me, but I've made this my own.
How long did it take until you officially made the decision to make these the 12 principles?
That took about a year probably from when I started first doing it. And I started a Notion doc, and every time I would have a moment where I would have some conversation with somebody and I'd have an argument or a debate over something, or we'd get down in it on some issue, and I'd realize a lot of times I could reframe the conversation when I would appeal to the first principle that we both agreed with. And then it was a matter of disassembling the faulty logic that led them to the wrong conclusion 3 orders down, when we both agreed, whatever, name one of them, and so a lot of times when I'm in an argument style situation, I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to find the common ground that's in a higher frame, and then arrive at a destination together where we're not arguing anymore because we actually realized we agree. I think most people agree on most things. They just get confused with the language.
Well, I think too that you're data driven. I've seen you be emotional, but I haven't seen you extremely be emotional without the sight of logic. Like I've seen you like get excited, right? I've seen you engage in a conversation where I've seen your eyes wide open a little bit, right? Where like you're like, ooh, you're enjoying it. But I've never seen you get emotionally frustrated or anger or upset. Where do you think that comes from?
That probably comes from not perceiving any threats when I'm in whatever environment we're in together. I think when I get emotional, it's when I feel scared. When I get angry, it's because I'm afraid of something. And we haven't been in any threatening environments together where I've lost my composure.
Would you say you're a pretty composed person a majority of the time?
Oh, you have to ask my wife.
All right, I'll call Jessie. I got her cell phone number.
I think I generally am, but and I'll tell you, and I'll just be transparent, that the thing that I'm working on the most right now is keeping my emotional composure when things are going wrong, or things are hard, or things are confusing, or things are not working with my kids. That's the hardest thing for me, is to keep it together when everything else is falling apart around me and it's pulling me in. And that's what I'm working on the most right now. That's what I have the most work to do on.
Is that something challenge. Where you, like business wise, is affecting that, or just stuff outside of that core family? Like what?
No, there's a list of really specific things that are going on with the kids that are just like, internal, personal, family things that are happening. It's not really. It's independent of what's happening in the business. It's independent of what's happening in the other areas.
So you can separate from that, but internally, some things frustrate you.
Yeah.
And it's hard for you to keep your composure inside the family when navigating some of the family things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just being transparent about that. That's one area where I'm definitely not perfect, but I'm continuously working on it. And I'm looking for the answer. I'm going to mentors. I'm going to people who specialize in all the things that I need to change about myself or help someone else update about themselves. I'm doing that work.
What did you say when I interviewed you? Taking out the trash?
Yeah, that's it. So if you're winning at work, but you're losing at family and life, you're losing.
Like hard, big capital L.
Yeah.
Like
you
are losing.
Yes. So I'm of a mind to, and this is something I learned from my martial arts teacher, to face the danger, look it in the eye and go towards it. And, we do drills, exercises. I mean, fencing, both Asian style fencing and Western style fencing. If you try to shrink and get out of the way and hide, and you don't really confront what's coming at you and deflect it right and go back, find the opening, then you just get destroyed, basically. So you can bring that over to business, you can bring that over to family, you can bring that over to a lot of different areas. You know, in business, I like to confront issues head on with kindness and composure, and figure out like, well, what's going to be the thing that's going to blow this whole thing up if we don't talk about it now? Like, why let it fester? You know, for some reason, it's easier to do that. And I guess this is an obvious thing. It's easier to do that in a depersonalized or friend work layer than it is to do with the people that are the closest to you that you love the most. That stakes are so much higher. You know, as a father, you don't want to screw this up. The stakes are so high. Sometimes you think they're higher than they really are, and maybe you should just chill and like just breathe and just be present, you know, instead of trying to fix something. All of that is programmed into this. So what I'm doing is reading to myself something that is the best version of me, whether I'm living up to it or not. I'll read the last few. We are all equal, but often forget it. So, you know, what's a subcategory of that? There's all these subcategories of that. Like, I don't believe anyone should ever be judged or not get a job or be discriminated against for any immutable characteristic whatsoever. I just don't believe in any kind of negative bias like that. I don't think it's cool, right? And I think that's really easy to defend. And I think that when you get down into the whole argument over, you know, affirmative action, DEI, civil rights, and all the different opinions people have, it's really interesting to kind of think about. I think everyone's telling themselves that they're the good guy and that they're trying to fix this thing that's wrong, that's abusing people, even as they're yelling at each other. But I feel like if I sat in a room full of people on all those sides and sat in the middle and said, hey, raise your hand if you think people should be judged, discriminated against, and abused based on immutable characteristics, I don't think any of them would raise their hand. I don't think they would. I mean, maybe someone would, and they just reveal themselves to be a crazy person. I think most rational people would agree with that on both sides as they're yelling at each other.
I was going to say the irony in that is quite interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. So what do you do with that? You know, I want to reframe up to first principles. I don't want to get lost in the noise. That's why I read this to myself every day. So the other three, we are all sovereign, but often forget it. You're sovereign. I'm sovereign. We're choosing to be here. But we forget it. So we fall into victim consciousness. We think, oh, I'm a victim. Oh, I didn't choose. You chose this. I mean, come on.
When it comes to that,
I didn't kidnap you and bring you into this podcast studio.
I was going to say, do you think regret falls into some of those decisions that equate to that sovereignness?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I can regret mistakes I've made that I can own. So, yeah.
Keyword own.
I have to own it, though. I'm the one that screwed up, you know? Makes me think of that TED talk that Jocko gave, you know, on extreme ownership. I really believe that. I think business is a meritocracy. You can pretend like it's not, but it's just a matter of time before you figure out that it is.
Pardon my ignorance. Can you define a meritocracy? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's just the idea that merit is what determines who wins. So if you try to manage outcomes with a business and they're not based on true merit and real data, which is a little higher up, verified data being the foundation of all knowledge, then you know, you can kind of try to manage outcomes with a you know, HR strategy that's trying to like make a bunch of people happy. But at the end of the day, you've got customers that are either giving you their money for a product or a service, or they're not. That's it. That's literally it. Everything's built on top of that. And the market will decide.
I was just going to say that, dude. You took that out of my mouth.
You're going to get spanked by that invisible hand if you're not careful. If you're not watching, you know, are my customers happy? Do they want to buy what I'm selling? Am I selling something that's good? Those are the things that matter. That's meritocracy. Somebody else comes along and steals all your customers because you're like too busy managing outcomes. Then you're out of business. And then all of a sudden, none of those outcomes matter anymore because everybody's looking for another job.
It's funny. I always say you don't have a business if you don't have customers. And I forget, I realized over time how many times I forgot that.
Yeah.
And how much I see it forgotten in any business or conversation that I've had with others. You know, it's quite interesting. It is the core foundation of calling yourself a business.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll wrap this up and then we can, I don't know how much time we have, but the last principle is always be armed. But look at the way I phrased it. I did that very intentionally. Always be armed. Well, now we have to ask a question. What is a weapon? I don't have anything on me today. Like I literally don't.
You checked it at the door?
Yeah, I don't have a knife. I don't have anything. But I'm armed. So what am I armed with? Awareness, consciousness, the ability, but don't want to ever go there. I think everyone could benefit from that. Train. Learn how to defend yourself. Learn how to fight. You know, then your mind is the weapon. Your mind is a more dangerous weapon than a knife in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use it. It's a gift to you.
Is your mind a better weapon than your physical approach to fighting?
Your mind
remove the gun, the knife, all that.
Your mind is the physical approach, because the best fight is the one you don't have to fight, right? So if you're really paying attention, and you see some sketchy thing going on, you're not moving towards it. You're disappearing into the bushes. You're like Homer Simpson. Like, I think that's the way to go. But you know, if it got down to it,
Homer Simpson, you see that meme where he's like,
but if it got down to it, you know, have some training. So, you know, there's 3 things that I do that sum this all up: is creating order and harmony, destroying chaos and dissonance, and inspiring and optimizing people, which starts with me. So that's, you know, and there's more, but that's kind of what I'm reading to myself every day. And that's the impact on my life was learning this framework, connecting it to remote viewing as I understood it, parallel universe theory, meditation, mindset, putting it all in the center and layering in all the things that are not true yet. And then telling myself all these things, baking my principles and my values into it so that my behaviors reflect my values. And then basically calling myself out on it whenever I'm out of alignment with it and being willing to be corrected. That's been the biggest thing that has determined my future since I started doing it in 2018.
Be willing to be corrected.
Yes, but only by someone who I respect. But that means I have to curate people who I respect. And I'm very careful about who I respect and who I let in and who I let correct me. There's a short list of people who can correct me that are some of the most badass people you'll ever see. And when they call me, I pick up the phone and I listen to what they have to say because they're probably right.
Well, just to let you know, man, you're someone like that in my life. And I really appreciate you and our friendship. And I'm grateful for you being on the podcast today, man.
Thank you for inviting me.